The NHL Winter Classic is coming up later today. We have you covered with coverage from both the Seattle Kraken and the Vegas Golden Knights. Plus, the New York Islanders have found a way to overcome injuries and stay competitive in the tight Metropolitan Division. We've got all that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. It is my pleasure to welcome in the very busy, the very talented Erica L. Ayala, the host of Locked On Kraken. And Erica, here you are in the middle of the preparations for the Winter Classic. Let's just start with this. How important is it? What does it mean to this city and to this, the NHL's newest franchise, to be hosting this game?
I think it's huge. First of all, we have the two newest franchises playing in the Winter Classic. The Seattle area has never had a Winter Classic hosted by the National Hockey League. So, of course, this is huge. And I'm not sure if you can hear that roaring sound behind me, but that's the crowd from Lumen Field as the Seahawks, at the time we're recording, are playing. And so there's literally going to be a spillover of all of those fans at Lumen Field who will come out and have an opportunity to be a part of the NHL's fan village. And I understand, at least on the Kraken side, I didn't get to ask any of the Golden Knights, but some of the NHL players are also making their way over to Lumen Field to catch some football. And of course, the Washington Huskies also having a really good run in college football. So to have the Winter Classic nestled in all of that is huge. And T-Mobile Park has been an arena that the NHL has felt really allowed them to get creative when it came to some of the field design, not just what it looks like, but the actual three-dimensional aspects. With the walls as high as they are, the NHL was able to really build up from the ground, from the field. And so all of these elements, I asked Steve Mayer, who's the chief content officer over at the NHL, between the crowd that the Kraken is going to draw, the fans that are coming from other sports, the fact that we are on target to sell out the Winter Classic, it does seem like Seattle, after this opportunity on Monday, will have a chance to host a marquee event for the NHL sometime in the future.
Well, that's always appreciated. And look, for the Kraken, well, let me ask you this first. Your thoughts on their uniforms for this game, because always have the special uniforms. How do you think the Krakens work out?
It's a great question. I think I'll start by saying that the jersey reveal was a little bit odd. We saw actually the Utah Jazz, as in the NBA team, be the first to unveil that look for us. But if you look at the Seattle Kraken logo in particular, you'll see that it's reminiscent of the Seattle Metropolitans. Actually, so much so that there is a pending lawsuit right now. It will not, any injunction, if there will be one, will not be in time for the Winter Classic. And so my understanding is that we will be moving forward. But you see that S that the Seattle Metropolitans wore. For those not familiar, the Seattle Metropolitans actually are the first ever team from the United States to win the Stanley Cup. And they did so against the Montreal Canadiens. So to have that history, to have kind of the pinstripe, if you will, the hockey version of a pinstripe and those blocked colors, I think is really great. I was saying early when I saw the design, I would have liked a little more green just to really bring it back to the Metropolitans, but given the lawsuit that I just mentioned, I guess we know why there isn't. But overall, I think it really embraced the colors of the Kraken, of course, the light blues and the teals that the team uses, and did their best to, again, bring that back to history, which is a part of the Winter Classic, an event that the NHL has been hosting for several years now.
You're there at the media events. How excited are these players to be hosting this event and to be participating in this event?
Of course, there's excitement, and it's been interesting to follow the Seattle Kraken leading up to Monday's game because they had a big game against Philadelphia on Friday. Not to mention that this game against the Vegas Golden Knights is for standings points, and it's a divisional opponent. So while there definitely is excitement, and I got to spend time with the team right after they were on the ice with their families, there's definitely excitement for this, but there's also an underlying understanding and appreciation that the way the Kraken have been playing to date in really the last 8 games, let's say, we're on a little bit of a win streak right now, there is an understanding and hopefully an expectation to just stay and steady the course. And so this is huge for the Seattle Kraken as a team fighting for a playoff spot. But of course, as we've already talked about, this is huge for the city. It's huge for players like Vince Dunn, who's never played in a Winter Classic. It's huge for players like Brian Dumoulin, who I believe on the Kraken roster anyway, has played in the most outdoor games. But yes, there is excitement, but this is still business as usual for the Seattle Kraken.
You mentioned business as usual, 4-game winning streak coming into this. What has been the difference over the last 4 games? And you mentioned the last 7 or 8. What has this team been doing better to be playing better?
And I will start with quoting Chris Driedger and even Vince Dunn, but both of them told me in the locker room that the thing that's been different is defense. And I wanted to make sure to quote them, Gil, because you and I have talked a lot, and you know I'm always harping and always carrying the banner for a solid defense, but that has been one of the differences, because we know that Joey Daccord in particular has been playing great. We know that Chris Driedger, who played his first NHL game since May of last year, had a really great performance in Calgary. So goaltending, even Philip Grubauer before his injury, and he was really hoping to get back for the Winter Classic, but he will not be healthy enough. We know that goaltending has given the Seattle Kraken a chance, but it has been the defensive effort. And I'm not just talking about blue liners. I say this a lot, but it's really the focus on a defensive effort. It's a focus on forechecking. We're a much better team when we're aggressive on the forecheck, and just being smart, knowing when to lay off and make sure you're cutting off angles and that you're working on gap control, but also knowing when to accelerate and really go after those 50-50 pucks to regain possession and to recycle the puck into the offensive zone. So the contribution to defense has been amazing. I think Tomas Tatar coming over in a trade, the timeline aligns with the Seattle Kraken being able to get more offense. He's on that top line with Everly and Beniers. And so giving those two options, not just to pass to so that Tatar can set up and score, but also he just gives that line a little bit more physicality. So I think it's just been a mix of a lot of different things, and they're all starting to align, whereas early in the season it was not aligned at all for the Seattle Kraken. You have great performances in one category, and then everything else would be lower than what the Kraken expectation is what I should say. So I really think that they, again, are starting to put everything in alignment and be where they want to be as a hockey team, while knowing that there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and is it possible? I mean, there's plenty of season left. Can they fight for a playoff berth this year?
So, Gil, yes, of course, there's still a chance to make a playoff run. That's what the Seattle Kraken want to do, especially because they were able to make it to the second round in the playoffs last year, and they felt that they had a little bit more to give. And so we heard from Jordan Everly, who was down at field level with us on Thursday, and he said, when you take a look at the Western Conference, when you take a look at the Pacific Division, there is still time. And he told us, hey, in 20 games or so, hopefully I'm standing here talking to media, and we're where we want to be. But what Jordan Eberle also said, which I think is very true, is that the Seattle Kraken know that they're not playing their best game just yet. They're getting a lot closer than they were, especially when we had that 7-game, 8-game skid earlier in the season. But now they're starting to string wins together. This is the first time this season that we've had 4 consecutive wins. It's been 2 wins here and then a loss, and then another 2 and a loss. So yes, there is still time. There's still plenty of work to do, and the Seattle Kraken have to stay healthy. But the good news, we did see Andrei Burakovsky come back in that last home game at Climate Pledge Arena of 2023. It seems like Jaden Schwartz is on his way back. He was on the ice with the team at the family skate and the practice that they had prior to Monday's game. So things are looking good there. You're always going to have to deal with injuries, but those were key players missing for the Seattle Kraken. And then, of course, Philip Grubauer has been our presumptive starter, although I don't know, Joey Decord and even Chris Jigger might be pushing the issue there. So I think, yes, there's absolutely a chance. It has to continue to be a strong defensive effort. I think, again, players like Tomas Tatar opening up things for Matty Beniers to be a more consistent point scorer. And I said it all this season, but that third line, or at least what we call our third line, centered by Yanni Gourde with Eli Tolvanen and Oliver Bjorkstrand, a.k.a. the Maestro, that is the line where, as that line goes, the Seattle Kraken go. And so I'd love to see them get on the score sheet a little more consistently in 2024.
All right, Erica, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Well, just like all of our Locked On podcasts, you can find the show on YouTube. We just cracked 1,000 subscribers, so we appreciate subscribe and notifications over there. And then on social media, you can follow at Locked On Kraken for all of the information. And anywhere you find the show, you'll find me.
All right, Erica, thank you so much and enjoy the Winter Classic.
Thank you so much, Gil. Have a great one.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab, or make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and a lot more. And it's not just the NFL. You've got college football, you've got the NBA, college basketball, and yes, you could use your knowledge of the NHL on FanDuel as well. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to make your first bet a layup. FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. With the Winter Classic approaching, it is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the co-host of Locked On Vegas Golden Knights, Chris Gawlik. And Chris, how excited is the organization and the fan base about being in the Winter Classic this year?
The players are definitely buzzing about it. We were obviously in the locker room after Thursday's victory over the Kings, big victory over the Kings for that. And each of the players had a little something special to share. Paul Cotter, actually, he gave a fun story about what he and his friends used to do growing up watching the outdoor games. So they would be in a basement, his basement, but they would be in someone's basements. And each person in the basement would act like one of the players on the ice. So they have their own little game within the game happening in some basements, acting like they're a player. I think Paul Cotter always wanted to be Sidney Crosby and that type of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, the buzz is definitely there. And just taking a step back, thinking about the fact that, 7.5 years ago, this was an unnamed franchise. No idea what the future would hold. And 2 Stanley Cup appearances later, 4 conference appearances later, 1 Stanley Cup championship later, here's the Golden Knights getting the spotlight. They get to share the spotlight, this is even crazier. They get to share the spotlight with the 32nd franchise. So awesome what the NHL has been doing. Nothing but love and props for what the Seattle Kraken have achieved in their short time as well.
Your thoughts about the venue and how this game will take shape?
There better be grunge music and there better not be rain. But besides that, I think I read I didn't see much grunge music in the lineup. So me and Tony were talking about that on Friday. If Pearl Jam's not there playing, they screwed something up. But besides that, I think it's going to be awesome. I've been up not to the ballpark, but I've been to the football field for a Sounders soccer game before. The area is really cool. You got the two stadiums right next to each other. All the pictures that are coming out from the detail on the ice to 4 Golden Knight players dragging a Kraken octopus thing in some net looked really, really cool. You got the ship out in center field. That's it's remarkable. The NHL has really found a way to make this a special occasion. I remember watching was the Blackhawks and Red Wings, was that the first ever Winter Classic or one of the first?
One of the first, yeah.
Either way, I remember watching that game very closely. I was in Vegas, but watching it on TV, and I'm not a Cubs guy, but seeing it at Wrigley Field was really, really cool. Obviously, I'm from Chicago originally. So, now I get to watch the team that I support and cover. Unfortunately, I'm not going. Just could be, like we talked earlier, just got back from our little Christmas vacation, so I couldn't swing doing 2 quick back-to-back trips. But I wish I was there. Looking forward to hearing stories from all my cohorts, I guess, when they get back to town.
How important is it that Vegas has a few extra days rest heading into this game over the Kraken, who are, going to be playing closer to the event?
I don't know if it matters as much in a game like this. I mean, there's so much happening. I think it's a wash, right? The Kraken gets to wake up in their own beds and just kind of get to. There's nothing normal about this game, kind of like a Super Bowl preparation, but in a much smaller scale. There's a bunch of press and media lead up to it. There will be stuff happening today around the ballpark. Obviously, tomorrow is the media day and everything. And then, of course, the game on Monday. It could even be more of a disadvantage for the Golden Knights who are practicing. They actually will be practicing pretty soon after this show airs. Saturday morning, 11 a.m. local time, Vegas, and then flying to Seattle. So basically, once the Vegas Golden Knights land in Seattle on Saturday, I'm sure one of the first trips is to the ballpark and just checking things out and everything. Maybe a disadvantage for the Golden Knights to enjoy the funsies, if you will, of New Year's Eve. And then they have to wake up, early, at least in their mindset, to play a hockey game. So could it be more of a disadvantage for the Golden Knights?
Your thoughts on the jerseys that each team is going to be wearing for the special occasion?
The Golden Knights screwed up by not wearing the gold helmets. But besides that, I think it's really cool. I think when the jerseys first got leaked, like by the AEW and the NBA and all that, which that was not leaked necessarily. That was all controlled chaos by the NHL. So props to them for finding creative ways to do it in a subtle fashion. But the jerseys themselves, I didn't care for. But then when you look at the entire kit with the socks, with the gloves, with the helmet, and the girdle and everything, it looks good. It fits. It's hard for me to look at the Golden Knights in a vintage Vegas type of way because the Golden Knights are 7 years old, as the Kraken are just a couple years old. So I think maybe going for the vintage look threw people off a little bit. But from a totality perspective, you got the Western wear thing happening. The Golden Knights Paul Cotter might have leaked potentially what the player's arrival will look like. I think it's going to be like a Western wear type of thing. And somebody actually suggested on one of my sports card streams, one of my business, I guess, are the Kraken actually going to show up like dressed as fishermen and stuff like that? Like, because that's obviously what the promo videos have been. I think that'd be a really cool thing if that's how both teams' arrivals were.
Yeah, should be interesting. You mentioned the win over the Kings. It ended a 4-game losing streak. What went wrong during that slump? What was the problem? I mean, every team goes through tough patches during the season, but this is unusual for this team.
Yeah, I mean, a 5-game losing streak would have matched the franchise's longest losing streak, which, considering they're an expansion team, is very odd and strange, but obviously in a good way. everyone wants to go to the goaltending, and the goaltending, Logan Thompson was not great. He'd be the first to tell you that for the last, not even 4 or 5 games, but 7 or 8 games. Golden Knights almost had an e-bug situation too, not too long ago against the Ottawa Senators. I'll tell you a little bit offline about that. I can't say too much online about it, unfortunately, but that just shows the concern and what's been happening with the goalies. But it's not on the goalies. I broke down the loss against the Anaheim Ducks. Yes, Logan Thompson, the goals given up didn't look good. But then when you look at all the passengers that are on the ice for these goals, just watching them happen, defensive zone, neutral zone turnovers, young forwards not chasing the center down the ice for that second and third rebound attempt. A player like Mark Stone collapsing after he forces his player to the outside and allowing a player to go right down the slot to clean up a goal. The narrative is it was a bad rebound left by Logan Thompson. Fine, fair, whatever. But your captain needs to be better on the defensive side of the ice, and no one wanted to concede that. So to answer your question, a lot went wrong. The goaltending went wrong. The play on the ice went wrong. I'd even say the coaching went wrong in some decisions about goalie starts and how Coach Cassidy has addressed some things post-game with the goaltenders.
Do you think this team has straightened these things out, or are they still in the process of figuring this out?
The Golden Knights are down to their 9th defenseman on the pecking order right now. Ben Hutton suffered a potential broken hand in Thursday's game against the Kings. So now you got Braden Pahal coming in replacement, 15 to 16 games played, primarily played games at the AHL level. Passes the eye test at the NHL level, but there's still some work to be done there. So you have Shea Theodore and Ben Hutton out, along with Caden Korczak, who have been playing really well. So that's a concern heading into the new year. How much longer can Logan Thompson shoulder a traditional starter's role where it's like an 80-20 split, like a Connor Hellebuck or Andre Vasilevsky? Right now, he's not checking that box too well, but he did check that box pretty well last season when he was on about a 70-30 split with between he and Aiden Hill. So that's a concern. Can Logan find his way? I'm not concerned about players like Mark Stone and Jack Eichel and what William Karlsson is doing, but I am concerned about a player like Brett Howden, who's playing a second line role on the wing, but only has 15 points and 5 goals with a career high of 20 goals. So could there be an opportunity to improve the team on that position? Can the Golden Knights make a deep Stanley Cup run on the shoulders of just one goalie, whereas they had Laurent Brossoit, a little ace up their sleeve, so to speak, last season? Can Yuri Patera fill that role? So there's questions. Can they get back to their winning ways? Yes. Can they get back to a deep playoff run? I'm a little concerned right now.
Understood. Chris, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you and your co-host on social media?
Yeah, so you can find our podcast 6 days a week now. Monday through Friday is myself and Tony Cordasco doing our thing, YouTube and anywhere you get your podcast. And then me and my son, Christopher, actually, we host the Chris and Chris show every Saturday morning. My son, Chris, is 9 years old, but man, he had some amazing points on this morning show that just went, well, this is coming out Monday. We record Saturday. You guys can follow what I'm saying. So that's a YouTube exclusive Saturday mornings, the Chris and Chris edition of Locked On Golden Knights.
All right, Chris, thank you so much, and enjoy. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
The New York Islanders, well, they have been dealing with a lot of injuries. 3 of their top 6 defensemen have been out, including Adam Pelech and Ryan Polak, who are both now on the long-term injured reserve. And you would think that a defense-first team like the Islanders that has really been successful in recent years because they're able to keep other teams from scoring more than anything else, they would really be struggling with Adam Pelech, Ryan Polak, and Scott Mayfield out of the lineup. Now, Mayfield did return for the New Year's Eve game in Pittsburgh, so he is at least back. But no, the Islanders have been finding ways to win, and a lot of it has to do with 2 things. Number one, you had the general manager, Lou Lamoriello, do a great job of getting some short-term answers into the lineup. Mike Riley signed off of waivers from the Florida Panthers. He has stepped in and added some offense and the ability to help the transition game of clearing the puck out of the zone and transitioning from defense to offense, something the Islanders had been struggling with a lot. The other aspect of it is that he traded for Robert Borzo and from the St. Louis Blues for a 7th-round pick. And again, Borzo adds size, he adds physicality, he is really a specialist in his own zone, but Borzo really gave them a steady veteran presence until Mayfield came back, in which case Borzo ended up being the first guy to sit when Mayfield returned to the lineup on New Year's Eve. So those two moves certainly helped. But the other thing that has helped is that head coach Lane Lambert of the Islanders really figured out that his team, under the circumstances, instead of trying to win 2-1 or 3-2, really needed to have the defensemen be a little bit more aggressive, to pinch, to join the rush a little bit more than they did, in the past under Barry Trotz, or even last year, especially late last year when Matthew Barzal was lost due to injury. And the result has been that the Islanders have been steadily climbing the goals scored category in the league. They're right in the middle right now through 35 games. They're 17th in the league in goals scored, and that really does make a difference. Now, it has cost them a little bit on the back end. Goals against, they are 18th in the league, and they are giving up a lot more shots on goal right now than they did in the past. The only team in the NHL that has given up more shots on goal per game than the New York Islanders is the San Jose Sharks. And we all know that, the Sharks are in a full rebuild right now. And that's why you look at the statistics for the two goaltenders, Ilya Sorokin and Semyon Varlamov. Sorokin has still a .911 save percentage, but his goals against average is 3.17, which is much higher than what you would expect from Sorokin. And it's not that he's playing badly. He's probably playing a B or a B plus kind of a game, where last year he was an A minus or an A. But the problem is that he's just facing so many more shots and so many quality high danger chances against that it is more difficult for the Islanders to keep pucks out of the net. The other factor defensively has been the blossoming of Noah Dobson. Dobson has 35 points in 35 games, 6 goals, 29 assists, 13 of those points, 1 goal, 12 assists, coming on the power play. But Dobson has stepped up his minutes, playing more than 26 minutes a game for, especially since you lost Pollock, and Mayfield. And he has just improved with his confidence with the puck, with his ability in the defensive zone. He's also right now leading the team with 81 blocked shots, and he is really getting the job done defensively at a level that a year ago nobody really would have deemed possible. So that has been a big addition for the Islanders. And then two other factors, I think, that has allowed the Islanders to stay in the hunt for the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. And that is, number one, the power play has been significantly better. Last year, it was among the worst power plays in the league. This year, they've been finding ways to get the job done. Puck movement, a lot more fast. Cross-ice passing, something that I was discussing all year last year on Locked On Islanders, and it just did not happen. This year, they really have. And John McClain, who coaches the power play, the assistant coach, has really made some nice adjustments this year and should be congratulated. And then I think the other big factor is the chemistry that is developed between Bo Horvat and Matthew Barzal. And, last year they were only together for about 6 games after Horvat was acquired for Vancouver. And then Barzal was lost for the rest of the season. Yeah, he did come back in the playoffs, but by that point, he had missed 20 plus games. He was not in the usual hockey shape, and it just wasn't going well for, Barzal and Horvat to get that chemistry down. This season, they really have done a very good job of working together. And you see now Barzal, 36 points in 34 games. Horvat, 35 points in 34 games. They are learning how to complement each other, how to work well together. And I think you add to that the fact that Matthew Barzal moved to the wing to play with Bo Horvat, and it limits some of the negative things he does when he holds the puck too long. Limiting him to one side of the ice has made him more effective with the puck when he chooses to hold on to it, and that has been helpful, reducing the turnovers, creating more scoring chances, and it has been great to see from an Islanders standpoint. So those are some of the reasons that the Islanders have been able to get back into the playoff hunt, and they were as high as second place in the Metropolitan Division heading into this weekend's games. So, a lot going on right now. Standings are tight, but this Islanders team learning, growing, and hoping that Adam Pelech and Ryan Pollock can return and that they can hold on and continue to play well until they get back. So, if you want to learn more about the Islanders, you can follow the Locked On Islanders podcast with me, Gil Martin. You can follow us on X at Locked On Isles. And of course, you can find the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Google, wherever. Also, of course, you can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI, and we'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all season long. So the Islanders looking good so far this season, and, want to just hope that they can keep going, because it's going to be a very competitive and very rough road in a very tight Metropolitan Division. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. I also want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Everydayers, we are here every Monday through Friday, bringing you the biggest stories from around the National Hockey League. So make sure you join us for that. I want to thank my guests. I want to thank Erica L. Ayala of Locked On Kraken and Chris Gawlik of Locked On Vegas Golden Knights for helping to preview the Winter Classic. And that is always a great event. So looking forward to that. I'm Gil Martin. I host Locked On Islanders. I also host the Monday edition of Locked On NHL, and I co-host the Friday edition along with Rachel Donner. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Happy and a healthy new year. And thanks for listening to and watching the Locked On NHL podcast.